The other thing that's, of course, dominated this week in Britain is Brexit. And we've had this utterly grotesque sight of the opposition parties and significant numbers within the ruling Conservative Party conspiring together to stop the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, taking Britain out of the European Union on October the 31st. They are forcing, at least as it stands, another delay. I think this is the third, possibly fourth delay. I think, was it the third? I don't know. There's been a series of delays since the spring of last year in leaving the European Union. I'm no supporter of Johnson. I don't support any of them, whatever the rosette colour. But he said, committed to taking us out on October the 31st. And he's been thwarted, at least as I speak, in doing that by this coalition of pro-establishment rabble who have forced a vote in the Houses of Parliament to say that a no-deal Brexit, which is what Johnson ultimately would have taken us out with had he not done a fair deal with the European Union, that no-deal Brexit cannot go ahead. Now, what this has done, it's another 3 months extension into January. So what this has done and what they've done with these delays and what they did from the start, this was the plan. Because there is a majority in the country at the time of the referendum, and many people believe an even bigger one now because they're sick of what's happened, among the people to leave the European Union. But in Parliament, supposed to represent the people, there is a majority, a significant majority that wants to stay in. And they've been using excuse and subterfuge ever since the referendum, 3 years ago, more than 3 years ago now, to stop Brexit. And the latest one is, we mustn't have a no-deal Brexit. That's the latest excuse to stop Brexit altogether, because the idea is if we keep delaying, then eventually we'll either get Brexit dropped or we'll have a second referendum and we'll overturn the vote. That's the strategy. And so what you have is a European Union bureaucracy that was shocked and staggered at the referendum vote and have been working in league with politicians in Westminster ever since to overturn the referendum vote or to have a official Brexit that so ties us into the European Union bureaucracy that it's not Brexit at all. And this has been done in two ways. First of all, you get the politicians right at the start to block a no-deal Brexit. This means that in the negotiations between the British government, then under Theresa May, who didn't want to leave the European Union either, and the bureaucrats in Brussels, the bureaucrats of the EU had nothing to lose, because Britain was then saying to them, we want to negotiate a deal to leave the European Union, but we're telling you now, we're not going to leave the European Union without a deal, which means the EU couldn't lose. Doesn't matter what deal it handed out, because the UK had said, well, we're not going to leave without a deal. And of course, Britain leaving without a deal would hit industry and commerce in the European Union in a very, very big way. So, but they've got nothing to lose. That's off the table, that there's going to be any effect on the EU of Brexit. And so the EU came up with this insult of a, quote, deal for Theresa May, who put it to Parliament 3 times and they voted it down. Some voted against it because it was so appalling and was worse than actually staying in. And some voted it down because they didn't want a deal at all, because they want to stop Brexit altogether. So we come to this week, and the new Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, comes in, and his whole campaign to win the leadership of the Conservative Party, thus by default become Prime Minister of the governing Conservative Party currently, he came in after a campaign platform of, I'm going to take us out of the European Union with or without a deal on October the 31st, and I'm going to negotiate with the European Union on the basis that if you don't come up with a good deal for us that's fair, then we're going to leave without a deal and you'll have consequences as well as us, which is what negotiation does. If two sides in a negotiation do not have something to lose, then it's so skewed, it's not really a negotiation, it's an imposition. So, the political class, led by the absolutely appalling Jeremy Corbyn, the alleged leader of the main opposition Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, who have so much contempt for democracy that they're openly campaigning to stop Brexit despite the referendum. The others are less open. The Scottish National Party are more open that they want to stop Brexit, but the Labour Party and one or two of the other stragglers, they want to give the impression that, oh yes, they do respect the public vote of the referendum, but we just don't want to go out without a deal, which is all wind and waffle because the majority of the Labour Party want us to stay in. And we have Jeremy Corbyn, who throughout his political career has been anti-EU, who is now leading the campaign to effectively keep us in. And he wants a second referendum to overturn the first one. I mean, the man is so disingenuous, it's unbelievable. And you know, this guy Corbyn came in having beaten a raft of Tony Blair candidates for the Labour leadership. And a lot of people saw this guy, in terms of the left, as the last chance corral, because the one-party state was coming in, where people had no real choice. Well, they haven't anyway. But anyway, the Labour membership increased dramatically, supporting Corbyn. And he had a chance of a real honeymoon period to really push through some positive things for fairness and justice. He's done none of them. He's just allowed himself to be sucked into the Blairite lair of the Labour Party, and now he's just a mouthpiece for them. And he's in, what is he now? Around, he must be around 70, this guy, in that area anyway. And as I said, in relation to Bernie Sanders in America, someone else in the 70s, how old do you have to be before you do what you believe to be right and stop playing politics for what you perceive to be personal expediency? How long? And what was even worse, and real confirmation of what the game really is that because of these Brexit votes and some actions by Johnson, the Conservative governing party does not have a majority in Parliament to get anything through now. all the opposition parties together, plus members of the Conservative Party who are voting against their own party on Brexit, they have the majority. So Johnson is, in theory, officially, the Prime Minister of Britain, but he has no power to get anything through because the other parties against him have more votes than he does. So, understandably, and like I say, I don't support Johnson at all, and never have, but we have to look at a situation dispassionately, not on the basis of whether we like people or not. And so Johnson then, after this vote to stop Brexit on October 31st, put forward a motion to have a general election so that the public can vote in the circumstances we're now facing on which party, Johnson's or Corbyn's or whatever, they want to run the country and deal with this Brexit situation. And because we have fixed-term parliaments in Britain, Johnson needed a two-thirds majority of MPs of all parties to agree to that general election on October the 15th, I think he was the date he mentioned. And the other parties voted it down. They wouldn't vote for a general election. And the reason they said they wouldn't, one reason in terms of the Labour Party and Corbyn, is he doesn't think he can win, but he's going to be forced into it. But the reason they said is, we want to get this law through Parliament and the Queen signing it, which makes it law, bizarrely in 2019, to stop Brexit on October 31st with no deal, before we'll agree to an election. So that is absolute contempt for the people of Britain, because they do have complete contempt, not least for the result of the referendum, because they didn't want to go to the country in an election on October 15th, Johnson to win and still have time to take us out of the European Union on October 31st. They didn't want that. So what they've said is, we'll delay the general election until this bill is through Parliament. And so it's so blatantly obvious what the game is. It's stopping Brexit. And I do hope that, and the evidence is that this is where it's going, that the British public will, in the election when it happens, give their verdict on the contempt that Corbyn, the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, the Green Party, and the Scottish National Party have for the British people and democracy itself. I'm sure the Scottish National Party will do okay in Scotland because they had a majority in Scotland, wanted to stay in. But the English parties, I hope, will reap the whirlwind. Because people say, oh, we've got to get the Tories out. Well, I've never voted Conservative in my life and never will. I won't vote for any of them. But if anyone thinks, on the evidence we've had since Corbyn came to power as leader of the Labour Party, that the Corbyn Labour Party, or the Blairite Labour Party, which it really is going to change anything for the better, then they are living in the proverbial cloud cuckoo land, because they're not. British people don't have choice, just like Americans don't have real choice in politics. They have masks on the same face. But at least in this next election, as things stand, it is going to be a choice between voting for Brexit or voting to stop Brexit. And if people vote to stop Brexit, then they themselves have contempt for themselves in allowing themselves to be coerced into that decision by a political class that set out from the day the referendum result came out to ensure that that was the outcome.